Today the Minnie and I have hit the road and we've headed out to beautiful Coatesville in southern Pennsylvania. We are west of Philadelphia on this lovely property with very old homes, very old established garden, and we're walking around with breeder Sinclair A, Dunvegan Nursery. Today is April 12th, it's a Monday, and we're here live at the nursery, Dunvegan Nursery, where our breeder Sinclair A is going to talk to us about the River series, the Divarella series, and possibly some new things that he's been working on. I'd like to introduce you all to Sinclair A, one of my favorite new breeders. Sinclair is the developer of the River series of Divarella and the new Divarella series that we're going to be introducing next year, and he's going to talk to us today about why he got interested in foam flowers. So Sinclair, why foam flowers?
Thank you, Angela. Foam flowers are one of my favorite plants for a number of reasons. In the early part of spring, after you've seen the bulbs come and go, they come forth with a beautiful array of flowers, typically white, although some are tinged with pink and some are almost red in their sepal color. They also bring the bees to life, it seems, as that they bloom at the same time that the bees are emerging from the winter hibernation period and really in search of some good and helpful nectar. And this is one of the things that the foam flowers are so good at, in the sense that they cover the ground and they can carpet the ground and provide a sheer abundance of flowers and nectar for the bees. It's also a plant that's associated with stream sides and riparian areas, and these areas are impacted in our country today, and we are all concerned, all Americans and indeed all humans are concerned with global water quality issues. And this plant is one of the plants that typically holds the stream bank or adjacent areas, moist areas, and in nature that would be, and indeed also takes in a good bit of nutrients or surface water pollutants that might be flowing towards that stream, cleaning our water. So those are some of the reasons I'm interested in the plant.
I know one of the reasons Sinclair and I are so interested in promoting the Divarellas is as a replacement to some of the more common yet invasive ground covers that are planted all over the United States. What we're looking at here is two big invasive plants in one. Not only do we have ivy climbing up the trunk of this very large tree and strangling it, but as you can see, or you will be able to see when it leaves out in a few days, is that it's strangling an ailanthus, the tree of heaven, which is another invasive species. So it's kind of interesting. Sinclair's talked about having a huge bonfire and sending it all up in flames in one moment. But this is one of the reasons we're very interested in promoting the River series, is because there are a few of the selections that are as ground covering as ivy and vinca, as drought tolerant, as interesting, yet they don't harm other plants, they don't take over wild areas, and they give food for the bees and lots of other wonderful wildlife. This is one of the greenhouses at Dunvegan Nursery, and as you can see, this is Divarella heaven here. Too bad the bees aren't in here doing some pollinating today.
This is one of our new Diva series. This is Divarella Stephanie Cohen, named for our friend Stephanie, who is a great promoter of native plants and also of good plants. And I thought this was an outstanding enough Divarella to be named in her honor. This is a very shiny form. The foliage is somewhat rugose compared to most Divarellas, so there's more bumpiness to the tissue. It catches and reflects the light. It blooms a little later than the other Divarellas, typically coming out 1 to 2 weeks after our first cultivars are starting to show their maximum bloom. Pink tinted flowers, quite a high number of stems per plant, a clump former. It's a very good garden plant. And this is a lot of this tissue you're looking on this particular plant is overwintered tissue. So unlike some of the Divarellas, which take on a very unattractive appearance as they're throwing out the new foliage, this one doesn't have that issue. And so that's a remarkable garden quality of the plant. But very nice dissect foliage on the plant, and I think this shiny dark green rugose texture with just the tiniest red heart in the center makes it a smash in the garden. Here's another one of our Diva series. This plant's bloomed pretty much out on its first round of stems, and this is Divarella FM Mooberry, named for FM Mooberry, who started the Brandywine Conservancy's plant program, the seed exchange, and the Millersville Native Plant Conference, which I think is a very wonderful event. And in honor of FM, who I deeply respect for her efforts, we brought this plant out. It has very dark leaves. The foliage takes on an extremely full and dark pigment, red but almost black colored, and this expands throughout the whole leaf as the leaf matures. When they come out initially, they're a little bit on the greener side, but that pigment will expand with the leaf as the season wears on. Goodly number of stems for the first bloom, and then what this plant does is it sends up compound racemes, giving us a sort of candelabra effect. And these have a habit of laying out a little bit away from the clump. That, I thought, was something that made it most worthy of FM, because it's spreading its seed progeny just like she spread the concept of native plants. And a wonderful, wonderful garden plant this is. We've even tested this in some very horrible environments. It survived well in a canyon in Topanga, California, with high winds and temperatures soaring over 100 degrees. So good plant in many parts of the United States. What works just as well in the cold. In Vermont, it's looking very good also. So those are two of our divas. Here are some of the seedlings we've been picking out for this year's work. We do somewhere on the order of 10,000 seedlings per year at least, just to select from, and most of those we distribute as Divarella cordifolia, the ones we don't want. But in this case we're looking at some very interesting characters in terms of distinction in leaf shape. This is the we have several forms going on here. There's small and large, a couple of the fingered forms, rather remarkable in their shape. This is some of the variation you can see in pigment. Each one of these is a different seedling, and pretty striking. And so from a design point of view, we're starting to get to the point in selections that you can get almost any pattern you need in your design in gardening. Another thing that's kind of interesting is usually you see leaves that have pigment concentrated at the center, like in this one. And we have developed a series that are a little bit void in the center but concentrated at the tips, which we think is a nice alternative and allows for a little more green depth in the garden planting. It's a subtlety, but it's probably useful in design as well.
We're in one of the greenhouses at Dunvegan, and I was just wanting to show you the Rivers of River series. You can see what this would look like as a ground cover in your yard, as a replacement to ivy or vinca or anything else that is not good for the environment. This would be a wonderful springtime blooming patch of just glorious bee havens. These are just some of the other seedlings that we've seen walking around the garden. You can see this one with its fantastic pink stems and pink buds and very dark leaves over the winter. I'm going to come back in a few weeks to see this one, actually probably next week, to see this one in full bloom. But I'm excited to see how this one turns out. Look at the flower power on this variety. Well, this is it from the Dunvegan Nursery Trial Gardens, the home of the River series and the Divarella series. I just wanted to leave you with one closing shot of the trial gardens, and you can see all of the Divarellas in bloom. There's some Delaware making its debut. This lovely pink flowers. We look forward to seeing more from Sinclair and coming back when the rest of the seedlings are in bloom later on in the spring. Thanks a lot. Have a great week and happy weeding.